Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me this time. Yes, so we had some mic malfunctioning, but we're back now. So, in this video, I wanted to share with you books that are going to make your child so smart. Now, these books are going to be way above their age and grade level when you read them with your child. Now, before you say, why are we pushing kids to read so early? Listen, when your child was 6 months old, 1 year old, two, three, four, you read to them books that were way above their grade level or age level. So why all of a sudden, when children become 4, 5, 6 in school age, do parents just say, okay, that's it, I don't have to read to them anymore? No, you do, for the exact same reasons. When you were six, your child was 6 months old, or 1 year old or 2 year old, they could not understand the books. They couldn't read them, number one. They didn't know how to read the words. Number two, they couldn't understand the book unless you told them, right? And so you would read the book to them and tell them, oh, look, this is a tree. They would gain vocabulary. They would gain a love of reading. We have to keep doing that with our children throughout elementary and middle school. And yes, throughout high school too, even though this video focuses on books to read with your child from pre-K to fifth grade. When I was in high school, my teacher read aloud to us Pride and Prejudice. Why? We were grown 14-year-olds. Why would she be reading aloud to 14-year-olds? Because we couldn't understand the book. We could not understand Pride and Prejudice unless she read it out loud with us and guided us through the story. Once she did that, we were like, wow, this is an amazing, crazy story. And there were still some parts in the book that we did not understand. And she had to explain to us, no, Mr. Darcy's first proposal is a bad one. And she had to explain why. And so if they're doing that in our school, right? And you should be doing it at home, especially if your child is in a school where they're not having deep book discussions like that. So if you read these books that I'm about to tell you with your children, they will be so smart right now. Like, people always are like, wow, why are your kids so smart? How do they know so much? How can they analyze this complex book? Because I've been reading complex books with them since they were 3 years old. And they'll be really super smart and set up for academia in the future. So let's get started. As you can see, my bookshelf's kind of bare right now. It was not looking like this. You need to go on Instagram and look at my beautiful bookshelf setup. But the kids keep grabbing books and taking them everywhere. And there's a whole shelf like right here missing, filled with these books that I'm about to show you, because these are the books that are some of the top books to read, in my opinion, to children in this age group. So we're going to start pre-K. Yes, pre-K/kindergarten, I would say. I read this Charlotte's Web with my girls. No, pre-K. So Apiwe was in pre-K and Mashle was like 3 years old. So 3 and 4 year olds, okay? Now, could they completely understand what was going on? No, not unless I explained it to them. But this book has some great pictures. This edition is color. I also really like the larger edition because it has large print. And yes, my girls were reading at 3.5, 4-ish years old, so they could read part of this book, but obviously they were not going to read Charlotte's Web on their own. Now, why a book like Charlotte's Web, or why Charlotte's Web? One, it has amazing vocabulary. The author, E.B. White, is great at describing the scene. So when children are hearing it, they know exactly what's going on. The vocabulary in this book. Okay, let me read just this first page, which was on my wall if you saw my Cricut thing. "Where's Papa going with that axe?" said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. So right there, if you're talking about a 3 or 4 year old, they may not know what an axe is. So that is the time for you to either show them this picture on the next page, or you stop and say, do you know what an axe is? Here's an axe. It's used for cutting wood. "Out to the hog house," replied Mrs. Arable. "Some pigs were born last night." "Oh, hog is another word for a pig." "I don't see why he needs an axe," continued Fern, who was only 8. So we see we're not just having books that are picture books that say, she said, he said. We have words like replied, continued. So they're hearing that language starting from a very young age. So when it's time for them to read chapter books on their own, they're not afraid of it. Okay. Do away with it. So the father's going to kill the pigs. Do away with it, shrieked Fern. You mean kill it just because it's smaller than the others? What are children learning there? We're starting to learn morality, values. We're having arguments on, is it moral to kill pigs? Aren't you eating some bacon for breakfast? Right. So this book starts up a lot of conversations that you can have with your children. Yes, when they are 3 and 4 years old. Again, if your children are older than that at this point, still a really great book to do. So that was that age. And then, so kindergarten/first grade. And again, I'm saying that because my girls were 2 separate ages. Kindergarten/first grade, My Father's Dragon. I love this book. We actually read this. My teacher read it to me in 4th grade in elementary school, and I've never forgotten it. We actually read it as sort of a math book because we were counting all of the things that the little boy was putting in his book bag. Anyway, I love this edition. This book is free online, by the way. A lot of these books that are very old, you can now access them for free online. So you can look up this book, read it for free. I like this book for kindergarten/first grade because I know it's a bit early, but it's good for transitioning children into longer books. This is a chapter book, right? But the chapters are really short. So you're teaching children early on, like, hey, you can read chapter books, right? Okay, that's the forward actually. Here's the first chapter. Beautiful pictures in this edition, by the way, and it's really big and the print is really large. So we have My Father Meets the Cat. Okay, so it's a couple pages and then you're on chapter 2. So again, I like this one for transitioning children into chapter books. And also, this is a trilogy. So children are learning, okay, we read the first book, you loved it. Do you want to read the second one? Perhaps on your own? Yes. Okay. So even good for 2nd and 3rd graders who you want to transition into chapter books and being able to read longer stories, trilogies, things like that. Okay. Awesome pictures. In this book, essentially, the little boy goes on an adventure to rescue a dragon. That's it. And I'm sorry, I should have said what Charlotte's Web was about. I just assumed everyone would know Charlotte's Web. But it's about a little girl who gets a piglet. She raises the piglet, and the piglet wants to save himself from being eaten. And so Charlotte, the little spider, starts making words in her web that describe the pig. Okay. And so they use that as a way to save the pig's life. Okay. I won't give it all away. And then again, this boy is on a mission to rescue a dragon, a baby dragon that is captive by some wild animals on Wild Island. So that was pre-K and then kindergarten. Okay. First grade, we have a couple different ones. One is Little House in the Big Woods. You may be familiar with like Little House on the Prairie. So this is the book that comes before. And the reason I read this book with my children and not Little House on the Prairie is because Little House on the Prairie has too many racist things against Indigenous people. And so I was just like, we're going to read the first book and not the second. Now, obviously, my kids really wanted to read the second book. And so at this age, it's fine. I allowed them to read it and spoke with them about representations of people in older books. But I'm just warning you that is in the second book. And actually, it starts at the end of this book. So this book is good because it's so descriptive. So it describes, I'm going to say the time period wrong. Okay. This family is in Wisconsin in the late 1870s. So it's right after the Civil War. And they're kind of, I don't want to say pioneers, but sort of. Out there in Wisconsin on their own. And so they have a house out there. So basically, she just describes everything in 1870s in extremely good detail. And I think this is a good book to help set up children to love reading, but also to be really good descriptive writers. Okay, that's that. My kids were enthralled. And then, and actually sorry, that's Teddy. Actually, we just read that book this past summer or a year ago, basically. But I put it in that first grade area because that's when I would have read it to them if I would have known about that book. But the actual books that we also read in first grade, Ways to Make Sunshine series by Renee Watson. There's Ways to Make Sunshine, I believe is the first book. Then there's Ways to Grow Love. Then there's Ways to Spread Joy. I think at this point there are 4 books in this series. And why this book is good is because, well, obviously for my children, they see themselves in it. They're little Black girls. It's a good book that describes Black culture in a really good way without it seeming like, oh, this is Black culture, right? So it's just like any of these other chapter books that a child would pick up off the shelf. I hope that makes sense, right? It's not like we're going on to the March on Washington type of book. It's like, this is the life of a little Black girl in modern America. So it's like the lives of many other children in modern America. Obviously not just for little Black girls, for any children. And it describes a lot of modern stores that they might know. Maybe there's like Netflix mentioned, Tillamook ice cream, things like that. But also particularly for Black girls, she gets her hair straightened for Easter, and then she gets in trouble because she jumps in the pool. She doesn't really get in trouble. But anyway, she goes to a pool party. She gets in the pool when she's not supposed to, and her hair gets messed up. Okay. And look at the illustrations. Okay, so why will this book and those others make your children ridiculously smart? This is a really good book to get kids to read chapter books early on their own. It's so easy to understand. It's very descriptive, but it's also very straightforward. Okay, here's an example. Ray is eating they're talking about ice cream, but slowly now. Most of the time, Ray's ice cream barely starts to melt. He gobbles it so fast. Why are we moving? He asks. The landlord is selling this house, so we needed to find another place to live. I asked Mom, but why is he selling the house when he already has us living here? And then they go on to talk. Basically, it's very simple, but it has really complex topics. So she moves. What does she do? She has a Christmas play where she gets really nervous and ends up running off stage. So very easy for children to understand. Again, it's at least a trilogy. And so it sets your child up for reading 4 books in a row. Second grade. Okay. You have to read these books with your children. The Wild Robot series. You absolutely have to. The author is Peter Brown. And one second, guys. They're screaming outside. I'm sorry. I have children. You're going to have to wait 10 seconds. Don't leave. What are they doing, Teddy? Okay. I think they're just playing in the rain. Sorry, the kids are out in the car waiting for me right now. We homeschool, and I'm about to take them to their co-op. And so for some reason, they're running out in the rain. Okay. And screaming, even though I said to sit quietly during my live stream. Anyway, okay. Why these books will make your child smarter. Again, you can see a theme with me. I like to do books that are a part of a series so that my children are always wanting to read the next book. And what I normally do is I'll read the first book with them. Not cliffhangers, but if you want to know what happens, you have to read this whole big chapter book on your own. And they always do. Always do. It never fails. Okay. So in this book, there is a robot. Her name is Roz, and she crashes on another island, wild island with wild animals. And she learns what it means to kind of be human. She's never met a human before, but to be a being because she's a robot. And so all these other animals are saying, what exactly are you? Who are you? Who made you? And so it's kind of talking about how artificial intelligence interacts with our world today. But mainly this series is about environmentalism, especially so in the second and third book. So yeah, really good to talk about modern topics. These books bring up so many questions, and that's what you want your children to be doing, asking themselves questions while they are reading. And they hit on so many different topics that your child is going to have to, with you, go and do research. Like, you know, I wonder, I want to learn more about migration. I want to learn more about robots. I remember when we were reading the series, I looked up that this really popular robotics dance here on YouTube to show my children. So basically what I'm saying is there are a lot of learning opportunities in these books, and children become deep thinkers by reading these. Also, this book takes them, I don't want to say across the world, but in many different settings. And so in The Wild Robot Protects, one of those settings is the Arctic, someplace very cold with icebergs. And so they're learning all these terms that they did not necessarily know before, or they may have heard in documentaries. Now they're also reading it in this book. So we're reinforcing some things that we've already learned, and we're also learning about new settings and places. And that's one of the reasons why, even though I don't do a lot of formal science teaching, to be honest, we're a little bit behind on that. My children have a huge science knowledge base because we read so much about science. I think I said that was second grade. Yes, because in the third grade, we read Pax Journey Home, another set of books that you must read with your children. This is Pax, the first book, and this is Pax Journey Home. Very difficult read, okay, for any age group of child through elementary school. To read on their own. So my daughter, I started reading this, and let's see, my youngest daughter was in the second grade. The oldest one was in the third grade at the time. So my second grader picked up, and after the first chapter, she was so interested. She kept reading. She can read the words at that point. However, your child being able to read words and going through a book fast does not necessarily mean that they understood the book. Now, they can probably tell you what happened, but it doesn't mean that they understand the book on the level that the book was written for. And so that's why, even though she went ahead and read the book, I said, okay, you're still going to read it aloud with me so that you can understand. Here's why this book is so amazing. It goes from, this is Pax. He's a fox, okay? He was adopted by a human boy when he was just a little, I think it's called a kit. He was just a little baby, and his mother and his siblings died. The boy in this story, his mother also died. And so that's kind of why he adopted this little baby fox. So around that same time, this is what happened. So he raises the fox up, and at a certain point, his father is going off to war. And so the book starts off with, you can see this book is well-loved. The book starts off with the little boy's father making him drop this domesticated fox off in the woods, guys. In the woods. He abandons him, okay? So Pax is confused, and he's waiting like, well, I know my boy is going to come back. Remember, fox are very intelligent animals. If you don't know that, I'm an animal lover, so I knew that before reading the book. But this book, if you did not know that, this book will teach you a lot about foxes and their behavior. And so he's like, I'm just going to wait here until they come back with the car. And then eventually he leaves because he gets hungry and they're not coming back. So the boy goes through a lot of trauma, and he feels very guilty about leaving his fox in the wood. He's very angry at his father. His father goes off to war and leaves him with some people, but he goes ahead and runs away to go find his fox, okay? Cool thing about this book is every other chapter is written from a different point of view. So that's another challenge for children, and it's something else that they are learning. Oh, books can be written in different ways. So the first chapter was the fox, second chapter is the boy, third chapter, will be the fox, and so on. The fox's part is pretty easy for kids to understand. So even if you wanted to do an every other thing where they read the part about the fox and you read the part about the boy, that would be good. The boy's part is more difficult to understand because you're dealing with a lot of complex human emotions. You're dealing with some trauma. And then the boy meets another person, and that person also has trauma in their background. It's nothing crazy. It's just like basic, oh yeah, I was in the war when I was young and this happened. I'm not saying that's not crazy, but it's nothing that would be scary for children or too traumatic for children at all. It's just regular stuff that happens in life, and it's affecting both the narrator and the human narrator and the person who he befriends. Okay. And then eventually the fox meets other foxes. It's very nice. It's very beautiful. Talks a lot about how animals are affected by human issues like war. So again, for me particularly, reading these books in this series was eye-opening for my children because we're reading a lot of books about the environment, the Wild Robot series, and then Pax. And we might have actually read these in the reverse order, and then Journey Home continues that story. Pax has a little girl. Okay, so I won't spoil that for you, but expect to cry because I cried throughout Journey Home. Okay, now we're on 4th grade. You have to read this book. I'm so sorry, girls. I know that you're late. You're late for school right now. Okay, you have to read Free Water. It's so good. So in this book, is he narrating? I don't think he's actually narrating, but he's the main character, okay? This book is about enslaved people in America who ran away from their plantations to form maroon communities. So already right there, your children are learning something that most people don't know anything about. They did not know that enslaved people created maroon communities. And there were a lot of maroon communities in the Great Dismal Swamp, which is like Virginia, North Carolina, but also in Brazil. But anyway, that's another video another time, and that is not touched on in this book. But so the narrator is 12 years old. His name is Homer. He has a sister and he has a mother. I can't remember what they said about his father. He has a father also. But anyway, he is on this plantation and his mother is planning to run away and go to the maroon communities, and she almost makes it, but his mother has to go back. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but basically Homer and his sister find the maroon community out there in the swamp, and he lives with them for a while. And it's really cool because this is a runaway community. There's someone who's a mole. Okay, it's like a little bit, you're always on the edge of your seat while you're reading this book. And so children are also really challenged because psychologically they're thinking, wait a minute, why is there a Black person in their community who is about to give them up? Why would someone do that? And of course, there's a little bit of aspects of some trauma in this book too, because some of the members of the community, the maroon community, they were born outside of enslavement. So kids who are Homer's age and younger, they were born out in that community. So they don't know anything about enslavement or anything like that. So you get that dichotomy between their life and his life, and their ignorance and his kind of wokeness or awakening. But then you also see kind of the trauma of the adults who are like, we are not going back into enslavement at all, and we need to do everything at all costs to protect our children. So very good read, and this will challenge your children psychologically, and it will challenge their understanding of humans and what motivates people, what drives them, same thing, and why people do what they do. And that's actually a big part of elementary education. So read this one. I wish there was a book too, but it kind of stands alone on its own. No pictures. No pictures. By the way, let me not front like I read these to my children, because this is a lot of books. My children and I read a lot of chapter books every year. And although I can talk easily in front of the camera for 20 minutes, when you start reading these books that are like 9 hours long, I go with the audiobook. And all of those, by the way, have really great audiobooks with great narrators. So half of those will be read as audiobooks. Now, where are my other ones? Okay, now we're at 5th grade, and then I'm going to go before my kids keep staring at me in the background. Okay, 5th grade. We are currently reading this book. It's really small. They call me, I don't know how to say that word, Guero. That's what we've been saying, although I think it's wrong. I I looked it up several times. Sorry, I still can't pronounce it. So, but I do know what it means. This is a good book to read to your children or with your children. It's in prose. Okay, so it's like little poems. And the reason why this is a good book is because it's starting to introduce children to global issues, not just global, national and international issues. So this book is about basically a border kid. He is not from Mexico, but he lives on the border between Mexico and the United States of America. It talks a lot about, not a lot, it gives you some Mexican history, like what used to be Mexico, talks about discrimination within his own community and also in the greater community of America. And the same with Free Water. It's not too heavy. I don't know if I said that about Free Water, but when my children were little, I didn't read to them a lot of like slavery horror books where children can kind of get weighed down. I think Free Water did a very good job at showing the harsh realities of slavery without being too much for children to bear. Okay. And I think this book does the same thing. Okay. Now, these books are both very honest, but they're just written in a way, just a very child friendly way. So that book is good at doing that. And also, this one actually my children read when they were younger, I think first and second grade, but so I'm going to add it in anyway. Sadako and the 1,000 Paper Cranes. So this book is about the survivor of the atomic bomb, one of the atomic bombs. I think the one in Hiroshima. I don't know, but Hiroshima. She's from Hiroshima. She survived the bomb, but I think she was still in her mother's stomach actually during the bombing, but she has some sort of childhood cancer as a result of that. Okay. And so this is a very emotional book. It's a book that's going to make your children cry if they are criers. And the reason I liked that is because it starts to show children that books can evoke emotion. And we want to read books that evoke emotion from us, whether that's laughing, crying, pondering, whatever. Books can do that. So the chapters are really short. I'm sorry, she's not, okay, crying here, but see, the chapters are really short. And it teaches them about different cultures early on. That makes them smarter. So when they were in first or second grade and they read this and people are asking them, do you know where Japan is? Yeah, I know where Japan is. I read a whole book about it, right? So that's that. Okay, I think that's it. Do I have any others I wanted to share? Oh, the other thing that we are reading this year is the Chronicles of Narnia series. Can't speak much about reading the series with the girls yet because we have not yet read it. This is obviously book 2, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I do not have the other ones. I would love to get a whole set of them, but I'm just going to pick them up from the library. And again, this is just another story. Even though I have not read all the books, I do know the story. And it's a very deep story. And there's a lot of things that represent other things, even the lion representing, this God, Jesus, whatever. I have to read it to exactly know what that's all about. But that is why I'm going to be reading that with them. And that's why, again, it's a good recommendation on my list. Also, it's like, is it 7 books? It's a bunch of books. And so I'm pushing my children to know, hey, you can read long stories. When you get to high school, when you get to college, it'll be nothing because you already know how to do it. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video. I really hope, though, you read these books with your children because it will make them insanely smarter. Thank you and goodbye.